China is a world power. Today, China is one of the five remaining communist countries in the world. Yet, China is one of the highest global status countries and has great influences around the world, especially economically. The reasons behind this successful country can be dated back to the late 40s when the Chinese Communist Party (CCP) and the Soviet Union became alliance. The relationship with Soviet Union and the United States and other important countries during the Cold War causes the economic reformations later by Deng Xiaoping that made China to open their country and become the world's second largest economy and attracted enormous worldwide attention. Hong Kong, a former British colony, has also a great influence in China's economic growth. So how did China and Soviet Union become alliance? In 1949, the CCP won the Chinese Civil War against the Chinese Nationalist Party and drove the nationalist government to Taiwan. In June 1949, 3 months prior to the establishment of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong, the CCP leader, announced that the new China would support Soviet Union in international affairs. On the other hand, the US had been supporting the Chinese nationalists during the Chinese Civil War, and Washington refused to end the relations with nationalist government in Taiwan. Since then, the CCP regard the US as a threat and seek alliance with Soviet Union to offset this threat, because Soviet Union was also a communist country. On February 14, 1950, the Chinese and Soviet leaders signed the Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship, Alliance and Mutual Assistance. But why did the Sino-Soviet alliance collapse in the early 1960s? The Chinese quarreled with the Soviets over the issue of de-Stalinization, the Soviet proposal of building a joint long-wave radio station and nuclear submarine fleet in China, differing interpretations of Marxism-Leninism, Khrushchev's attempt to reach an accommodation with the West, and the USSR's refusal to support China during its conflict with India in the second half of 1959 and early 1960. As the Chinese poster on the bottom saying, "Topple Soviet revisionists, smash the heads of Brezhnev and Kosygin," who were the party leader and prime minister after the death of Stalin. After the relation with Soviet Union split, Mao reassessed the changing balance of power between the two opposite countries. Beijing and Washington maintained a communication channel. Talks took place in Warsaw, facilitated their relationship, offering a ready avenue for information exchange and crisis management. Sino-US relations had greatly enhanced the opportunities for China in international trade, while the US was also trying to open up China's market so as to enhance its economic strength. The threat from the Soviet Union had pushed Mao to improve the relation with the United States in the early 1970s. In July and October 1971, Henry Kissinger secretly visited Beijing, endowing it with the permanent Security Council seat that had been held by Chiang Kai-shek's Republic of China on Taiwan since 1945. In February 1972, Nixon's high-profile summit meetings with the Chinese leaders had proved worthy negotiation between the two. Both had the concerns over the Soviet threat, and each side agreed on utilizing the other to balance the threat. On the left, it shows Mao's and Nixon's meeting, and on the right, it shows Nixon and his wife were visiting the Great Wall of China. In 1976, Mao passed away. Deng Xiaoping was the vice premier. Under Deng, he successfully carried out economic reforms and foreign policies. The successful use of free markets in agriculture encouraged further economic experimentations. Foreign capitalists were allowed to open factories in southern China, and to export Chinese products around the world. Private enterprise was also permitted in cities where snack shops and a host of small businesses sprang up. Chinese leaders also drew on the business talent of wealthy overseas Chinese in Hong Kong and Taiwan, who is connected to the world market. The Chinese economy grew rapidly between 1978 and 1987, and per capita income doubled in these years. Sino-US relations had continued to work closely until 1989, when the Tiananmen Square massacre happened. On June 4, the Chinese government sent tanks to suppress protesters who were striking for democracy in China, leaving hundreds of them dead. This shocked the United States and other nations. They disagreed with the Chinese government actions. In response, the US government suspends military sales to Beijing and freezes relations. Although US policy was to promote the integration of China and the world market and to encourage China to promote internal reform and opening up, political relations between the two countries was no longer returned to the kind of intimate state prior to the 1989. By the end of 1989, the Cold War ended, and the Soviet Union collapsed shortly afterwards. But in China, communist rule by the Communist Party persisted and gradually emerged as a superpower. Deng and his successor Jiang Zemin reaffirmed economic liberalization. Private enterprise and foreign investment boomed in the 1990s. China has turned to capitalism economically by that time. Since Deng disagreed to continue the Cultural Revolution, which Chinese food production had collapsed and the country's industry was on its knees, he brought in Western technology and investments and allowed China to produce goods for export. An example of Western investment in China is McDonald's. 2 decades ago, McDonald's was largely unknown in China, but now it is a home to 800 McDonald's restaurants and 200 more in Hong Kong. KFC, Burger King, and Pizza Hut are also some of the other examples. Consumerism was encouraged with products are introduced to a larger audience of consumers, and consumers have a larger variety of goods. Businesses make tons of money and allow competitions in marketplace. Here is a short video about Deng Xiaoping and his economic reforms. So why is Hong Kong important to China's economy as well? Hong Kong is located on the southern coast of China. It serves as one of the most important trading points in China until today. Hong Kong has long served as the bridge between China and the world, conveying trade and investment flows both ways, and has long played a prominent role in the world economy. As a British colony after the Opium War in 1841, Hong Kong is a center of oceanic trade in the 19th century and turned to finance and manufacturing in the 20th century. Here is a map of Hong Kong. On July 1, 1997, Hong Kong was returned to China as a special administrative region under the agreement of one country, two systems. That means China will not interfere with Hong Kong affairs, as well as China's socialist economic system will not be imposed on Hong Kong. This makes Hong Kong the place in China with independent legal or judiciary system and freedom, a highly efficient neutral civil service, and is fully open and transparent, unrestricted free flow of information. The freedoms that Hong Kong can enjoy are like freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, and the freedom to protest. Clearly, the freedom to protest is not available in China since the Tiananmen Square protest has happened. Economy in Hong Kong and China are interdependent. The main reason for the success of Hong Kong is because Hong Kong is actually in the special geographical location and international relations, and also driven by China's economic development. Geographically, Hong Kong is almost the only window for China to the world over the years. In position on international relations, Hong Kong is the outpost of Western countries. The increasing integration with China economy has also allowed Hong Kong to recover more quickly than expected when Hong Kong's economy was hurt by the global downturn in 2008 and 2009. These special factors primarily contributed to the prosperity of Hong Kong today, leading Hong Kong to be the world's 10th largest trading entity and 11th largest banking center. And it continues to have one of the world's highest per capita GDPs. Therefore, Hong Kong has a reputation of the Asian economic tigers, along with Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea. While Hong Kong has also provided Chinese companies with access to global capital markets for bond and loan financing more than anywhere else in the world, Hong Kong had accounted for 2/3 of foreign direct investments into China in 2013, up from 30% in 2005. About half of Hong Kong's exports end up in China. 1/5 of its bank assets are loans to Chinese customers. Hong Kong's stable investment environment and fair, transparent court allows foreign companies to use the city as their staging post for investing in China. The Hong Kong stock market and banks are also supporting China's economy as it supports China's state-owned enterprises, and is explained in the video below. So, how did China's economy continue to expand? The U.S. President Bill Clinton signs the U.S.-China Relations Act of 2000 in October, granting Beijing permanent normal trade relations with the United States and paving the way for China to join the World Trade Organization in 2001. Between 1980 and 2004, U.S.-China trade rises from $5 billion to $231 billion. China has become part of the World Trade Organization since 2001, giving it all the privileges and obligations of participation in the liberal global economy. In 2006, China surpasses Mexico as the United States' second biggest trade partner, after Canada. From 1978 through 2010, the Chinese economy grew at an average annual rate of over 9% and foreign trade at an average of 16%. Chinese economy continued to grow despite Europe, US, and Japan faced severe economic downturn in 2008. In 2010, China replaced Japan as the world's second largest economy after the United States. It is valued at $1.33 trillion for the second quarter of 2010, slightly above Japan's $1.28 trillion for that year. At the start of 2011, China reports a total GDP of $5.88 trillion for 2010 compared to Japan's $5.47 trillion. There is also a saying that China will overtake the United States as the world's #1 economy by 2027. The US and other nations also see China as a threat. They fear that the rise of China would intimidate its neighbors, damage American interests in Asia, and destabilize the American-led international system. From this, it shows that China began to attract global attentions, and other nations look at China as a superpower too.